You created an Instagram story that stated that most people cannot even complete a week without missing their daily habits. Now imagine if you do that for months without ever missing a single day. So my first impression of you is someone who's like very disciplined, someone who's had a great transformation. I know you talk about that, you share your story. So for the first people who interact with you for the ever first time, I'm here with Sid Sriram, who's an entrepreneur, bodybuilder coach, and determined individual. So thank you for being here, man.
Yeah, it's great to be here, Lawrence.
I have a first starting out question, which is directly related to this personal journey. So, what did it do for your personal transformation for your life to leave the city you were living in, the place, and go to a big city like Miami, living out on yourself?
Sure, so before I lived in Miami, I used to live in a small town in New Jersey. Back there, I was living with my family. And over there, I lived a pretty comfortable life. I lived with my parents, I had a roof over my head, I had all my meals taken care of. I was essentially stuck in the comfort zone, and there was no reason to change. And at the same reason, that comfort zone was leading me down a bad path because you've probably heard the quote like idle hands are the devil's workshop. So once I was living in that comfort zone, I started heading down the bad path with like partying, smoking, drinking, all these negative vices. And that started causing a lot of problems in my life. And I knew I needed a change. So I decided, taking the little amount of savings that I had, I went all in, moving to Miami completely on my own, not knowing anyone in the city when I first came here. And that was definitely the start of a whole journey of self development and progress from there. Because when I moved to this new big city all on my own, all of a sudden I had no backup plan, no support group to rely on if I failed. I knew that there was only one person who could make this work, which was me. And if I failed, there was no plan B to fall back on. So that gave me a new level of responsibility. And I think having extreme ownership is the number one thing that I gained from it. What I mean by extreme ownership is knowing that everything, both good and bad, that happens to me from that point forward is completely in my control, and there's no one or anything external that can possibly help me or change my path. And it was taking that extreme responsibility and discipline for everything moving forward, which is what started that whole journey of self development for me.
Yeah, that's so great. And I often talk about my own journey from leaving my country where I always live with my family, the friends I've been seeing for 10 years, to living to another city. And I'm curious to how you see this. I think Miami is much different because it's like a hyper, like it's a big state, like it's a big place. I think it's not necessarily about the specific place you go to, but more about the journey of going out on yourself and actually being there for your own. What do you think about, actually being a young guy, entrepreneur, and moving out on your own? I think it's very important. It's critical. I was thinking earlier that I will just live with my parents a long time and just leverage that to have low cost and just stack up money, things like that. But I noticed that the opposite is much more important. It's far more rewarding to actually step into your own life, to claim your own ownership, as you're saying. So how do you view that? Like, what is your take on that?
Yeah, I'm definitely in agreement with you. I think anyone who's young, especially a man who has large aspirations for their life, needs to get out of their parents' home and on their own as soon as possible. Because while there is some validity in saving up money, I think there's far more growth potential in taking responsibility over your life than you can ever gain from saving a little bit of money. And to put things simply, like, I don't save a lot of money. I invest almost every cent that I earn either into my own self development or into my business. And that allows me to grow at a much faster rate than others around me because I'm not scared to spend money. I think that when you're constantly spending money on books, courses, mentors, new experiences, these things allow you to grow at a much faster rate than saving a little bit of money. And because I took those risks early on, spent a lot of money to move to a big city with a high cost of living, spent a lot of money on various courses and mentors along the way. That allowed me to not only, while they may have cost me money in the short run, they allowed me to increase my earning potential a lot more in the long run. So I would say that to bring things back to the question, it's absolutely vital for anyone to get out of that comfort zone as soon as possible.
Yeah, well said. I completely agree. It's the accelerating growth, right? So it's really allowing yourself to leverage yourself almost. So now, speaking on this topic, we met in a networking group. You know, there's many of these groups out there, the online networking, things like that. So I want to ask you, what value do you get from this? You mentioned investing in yourself and like the courses, the books. What role does like the networking groups play for you?
Definitely, yes. So you and I met through the CEO network group. I'm part of many different networking groups similar to that. And I think that networking can also be a great accelerator to one's progress, both in the personal space as well as the financial space, when it's done with a purpose. At the point in my life where I chose to join the CEO network group, I noticed that the friends who were surrounding me in Miami had different goals than I. They constantly wanted to go out to parties, chase women, and so on. But I wanted to surround myself with people who had broader goals in business. And that's why I chose to join this group. And I think joining similar networking groups can be really great, especially in the internet world that we live in right now, because even if, to talk to your point earlier, let's say you're in the position where you're stuck in a small town, but you don't necessarily have the means to get up and move right at that instant. You can use the internet and these various like networking groups to gain access to people that you otherwise wouldn't be able to, gain insights and knowledge that you otherwise wouldn't have access to in your town. And I think through the internet, through these networking groups, that's how also I've met various business mentors, and that's also been a huge accelerator.
Yeah, for me that's very similar. I think tapping into different type of networks is extremely valuable for me personally. It's been a big part of my growth online with, you know, networking or business in general. And it's not just about, you know, meeting the people, but it's about the fact that you pay actually for being part of something, which is that commitment. But that gives so much accessibility, whether that's direct people you can learn from or can turn into clients, whatever your goal is there. So I think that's it's so good, it's so valuable. But what would you say is kind of the first step? If you are to zoom in, or zoom out actually, and you go a few years back, there's many people in a similar situation. They might, you know, want consider living on their own. They might think, okay, I have a little bit of money stacked up, let me join this group or buy this, whatever. What do you think is like the main advice for starting points? Like what first steps should you take if you're at the beginning of your journey?
So thinking back to someone who's at the very start of their journey, maybe they have a little bit of money, they want to start a business, want to start that journey of growth. I think the point you mentioned at the very start of this call is what I would recommend, to start on yourself. Start by building those good, healthy habits, because I think once you build those healthy habits within yourself, that sets you up with the fundamentals to succeed in whatever you choose to pursue. And the way I choose to structure my life is I don't want to create the best tech company, or I don't want to create the best company. I want to create the man who can succeed in whatever business he chooses to pursue. So start with yourself, not any specific business or career path. That's what so many people get wrong online. They're like, oh, can I do drop shipping or whatever other shit there is, like sales or something. Don't try to go down some random career path. Focus on building yourself. And what do I mean by that? Start by building the healthy habits. Get rid of all negative vices. Cut out junk food, smoking, drinking, all that bullshit. Reading every single day. Waking up early in the morning. Those simple things, if you do it for one day, it's not going to do anything. If you do it for a week, it's probably also not going to do anything. But when you do it, stack up those simple daily habits. You're working out every day, you're reading every day, you're improving your mind and body. Over months and years compounded, that's going to create a huge base to succeed in whatever you choose to pursue down the line.
Yeah, man, that's so powerful, and I completely agree again. This is such a big thing of actually breaking through because you're setting a new standard for yourself, and in some way, it's all about the standards you have. And going back to what we talked about before, if you are in that comfortable situation where you're living with your parents, you're with the same people you're used to be for like 10, maybe 20 years, like their standards is default. It's the default life. And what I noticed personally from the town I used to live in, like just a very small place, not even a city, but nobody really took that initiative to actually say, okay, cool, I'm going to level up, or I'm going to start to go to the gym, or I'm going to start to actually change what I'm doing for something better, which is hard to break out to, but that starts by taking that stand up for yourself, right? It starts by actually taking the decisions yourself. So I appreciate you sharing that, and I really like the fact that you also shared books. It's kind of becoming a little bit controversial almost, because a lot of people tend to think that books aren't valid anymore, things like that. I personally am a big fan of that. I think it's very good. So what is your take on that? Like, what are some of the top books you have, and why is that like part of your daily habits too?
So, firstly, I think maybe the bad rap that some people have around books is because I do think there's such a thing as reading too much. Like, if all you're ever doing is reading the entire day, it's probably not going to do anything for you. But I rather approach it with reading with a purpose. You read about something and then you actively action on it in your life. Like, if you're having a problem with a certain thing, you read a book about that specific area of your life that you're struggling with, and then you immediately put it into action. That's how I choose to approach reading. And if I had to pick like the top couple books that really helped in my life, I think number one, I would say Relentless by Tim Grover. This was a book written by Tim Grover, who was the coach of Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant, not on basketball, but with their mindset. And I like it because Tim Grover, since he coached Kobe and MJ for so many years, he talks about like what's the difference between the mindset of these top 1% performers versus the rest of the population. So I think it really gives a great like inside look about how these top level athletes operate. The second book that I really enjoyed a lot was probably $100 million Offers by Alex Hormozy. Hormozy is someone who I really look up to in the field of business, and his book about offers is basically everything how to like, if you don't have anything to sell, don't have a business, how to even think of what to sell, how to price it, and it's pretty much a great like step one for anyone who wants to start a business. And those are definitely the top two that come to mind.
Yeah, and it's also very practical. The book by Alex Hormozy is very practical, right? It's actually the 100 million offers. It's such a default thing almost, but it's so valuable. It's so underrated. So going back to the business things, actually starting out from that, can you tell what exactly it is that you do? Because you have like an AI agency, AI company. What is it mainly that you're doing there?
Sure. So my company is Next Gen AI Solutions, and we're a custom AI software development agency that's focused on developing AI software for a variety of different industries. So essentially, when a company wants some AI software built for them, we'll come in and we'll help them build it over a 6 month or 1 year period. Everything from ideation and strategy to development to release to the market. And we handle that entire progress for them. And we're not focusing on one specific software, we're focusing on custom solutions for a variety of different industries. So we work with medical and pharmaceutical companies, to education companies, to e-commerce, to construction, all over the place, because there's applications for AI in literally every industry.
Right. And I think most people, when they think about AI agency, they associate it with some very simplistic setup of essentially having a chat GPT run with some Make Automator, some Zapier integration. But that's not really what you're doing, right? You're really coming from a technical starting point. So can you zoom into that? Like, what is actually the process, the kind of the deliverables you're doing with your business?
Sure, so I'll give an example of a project, and I think a big reason why many people think that is because for 99% of the world, their only knowledge of AI is ChatGPT, because ChatGPT is what was released to the mainstream public. But the reality is, AI has existed for over 20 years at this point. It just became popular in the media within the past 1 to 2 years. So the reality of AI is behind almost every single software or application we're using nowadays, from like Instagram, YouTube. They all have AIs in their backend that are calculating our likes, dislikes, what we like to see. So, for example, one of the most interesting projects I worked on within the past year was essentially an AI that was helping disabled people who can't operate their hands or legs to operate a computer like we can.
Oh
So,
wow.
essentially, it was an AI that was integrated with a brain computer headset. So, a disabled person would put on their headset, that headset would read their brain signals. And essentially, what the AI was doing is it was transcribing those brain signals into computer actions. So, say for example, a person thinks, like, I want to go to YouTube and watch this video, I want to go to Amazon and order this product. It was essentially allowing any disabled person to operate a computer like any other person could. And that was a pretty groundbreaking project because it changed the world for all these disabled people.
Right. And what would you say is like the best entry in the AI market? Because it's pretty broad too, right? There's multiple variations, let's say, of how you can leverage that or what exactly the applications are for putting AI into a business or whatever that is. So, what is like your best starting point for someone who thinks, oh, I hear about it's kind of this buzzword of AI. What is like the starting point? What is your advice for people to actually start discovering the field and get started as well?
Sure, I think there's many great like free resources out there. Personally, I think the best one out there is Google has a set of free AI certifications. So I recommend someone who'd like to start learning more about how I'm doing and how they can start making money off it can look into the Google AI certifications. They offer a bunch of courses on how one can even go about developing AI software. So that's a good place to start.
Yeah, and it's so underrated too because free courses or even paid from like the internet is so valuable. Google has so many of them, and that's so untapped. Like most people in this space are kind of focusing on the courses by the big creators, the famous names. But Google in itself releases courses too. They have the marketing free course. They have all these AI things. They even have like leadership. For example, you also have the LinkedIn Learning Portal, which is like so many courses. I've been going through a lot of those things myself as well. When I was in college, I used this platform called 365datascience.com. You might have heard of it. They're covering so many different type of courses, which are actually given by experts in the field. I think that was so much more valuable than college in itself, where I was also studying computer science. So, that actual accessible online education is so big. So, what is like your formal education as well as your self education, and what is like the biggest, value there, which has allowed you to build this AI company?
Sure. So I did go to college. I did a bachelor's in computer science. I started doing a master's degree as well, and I ended up dropping out actually because that's when my business started picking up, and I realized that it was a far better use of my time to focus on business than pursuing this degree. And as far as educational resources, I'll be completely honest. In college, the courses that were taught were valuable in the sense that the skills they were teaching were very useful for what I'm actually doing now in my business. But the caveat to that is that was college the only way for me to gain those skills? No, definitely not. Because I'll be completely honest, a lot of my times during college courses, I would skip the classes and then just learn everything off YouTube because pretty much all that knowledge is available for free. I think nowadays there's such a plethora of free knowledge available on YouTube that you can pretty much gain the equivalent of a college degree just through YouTube alone. So nowadays I'm doing pretty much all my learning through there and books as well.
Yep. So good, and it's a strong ending as well. It's really that accessible information line. It's such a big part to really creating the life you want and getting after what you want. So, anything else you want to mention before we close it off?
To tie things up back to the first point you mentioned about the healthy habits, it's like, in my opinion, it's really as simple as like you dedicate every single day. If you just do an hour of working out, get your body right, an hour of reading or learning, get your mind right, improving every day, and repeat that over and over for months and years on end, the amount you can gain just from doing 1 to 2 hours per day, every single day consistently, compounds immensely over time.
Man, appreciate you being here, Sid. Have a great day, and thank you.
Yeah, it was awesome being here.